right, we are back live. I'm Dr. Cliff Olson, audiologist and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and I am joined with my co-host.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rachael Cook. I'm also an audiologist at Applied Hearing Solutions. Thanks for joining us again. We took a little break there for the holidays, got all refreshed from that, and now we are back and we are talking about the battle of the batteries. So today's episode is going to be focused primarily on disposable battery hearing aids. We're going to start out with the history of disposable battery hearing aids, how those have kind of progressed through time. And then we're going to talk about quite a few of the benefits of those disposable battery hearing aids. Then we're going to take a quick break there in the middle to talk with Dr. Laura Protesi. She is our Hearing Up Spotlight provider today. And then after that, we're going to move into some of the disadvantages of disposable battery hearing aids. And next week, we will focus fully on those rechargeable hearing aids. So part 1 of 2 today.
That's right. And if you guys have not already, hit that like and subscribe button if you like us doing these live podcasts, and make sure that you're asking your questions throughout. The more contextual it is to the topic of today's show, the more likely we'll be able to answer your show live on the air. So please go ahead and get your questions and hit that like button for us, okay? But let's jump into our first sponsor. So there's a lot of talk about over-the-counter hearing aids. Really, there's been a lot of talk for the past couple of years, but since October of 2022, over-the-counter hearing aids are an official category of devices, and I think that inside of our clinic, we have weekly consultations with patients who come in who are intrigued by these over-the-counter hearing aids, and there's a lot of different ones that are starting to pop up on the market, but it's very important that you know all about the devices that you're going to be using, and that's why you should really be checking out the hearing aids from Soundwave Hearing called the Santra over-the-counter hearing aids. So Santra was developed by this company, Soundwave Hearing, out of Oak Brook, Illinois. They are a receiver in canal design, which is one of the most popular designs that are out there right now. And they also use an auto-tune app on your smartphone that allow you to program the Santra over-the-counter hearing aids, making it possible to customize your own audio settings. If you really want to take this over the top, if you take these into a hearing care professional, they should be able to perform real ear measurement on these devices to see how close they can hit your hearing loss prescription, so you get the maximum amount of benefit from these hearing aids. Now, if you want to see how the Santra hearing aids did with real ear measurement, make sure that you check out my review video that I have on my YouTube channel, or for more information, you can go to hearsoundwave.com.
All right, and with that, we are moving straight on into the history of disposable hearing aid batteries overall. Now, we started out with these with mercury hearing aid batteries, correct?
That's right, and if you guys know anything about mercury, that is some nasty stuff. You definitely don't want to be putting that type of stuff into landfills. You definitely don't want to get it on your skin. It is definitely a toxic material.
Most definitely. So then the move was made in the 1970s to what we now know as the current disposable hearing aid battery format, which is going to be zinc air cell batteries. And one of the first advantages of those when those came out is that they had nearly double the battery life of their mercury counterparts. So that was a pretty nice addition there.
For sure. And then from an environmental standpoint, obviously, we do not want to be throwing this mercury into a landfill from the mercury batteries. And so it's kind of fun how these batteries work. Every time that we get someone who purchases disposable battery hearing aids, we usually give them a little education session on these types of batteries. But basically what happens is as soon as you peel the sticker off of the back of one of these batteries, oxygen can get into the battery. Now, there's a zinc compound that's inside the battery, and the rest of the essentially energy is generated by oxygen. So when those oxygen molecules interact with the zinc compound, they create an electrical charge, and so it actually allows the battery to start functioning. And the reason it wasn't functioning while it was in the packaging is because it had that sticker over the back.
Because of that sticker on there, yeah. So once you peel that sticker off, they do become live. They are activated. There's no putting the sticker back on again and hoping that it just turns that power source off at that moment. It is kind of a one and done type of a thing at that point. It might reduce the discharge on the battery if you were to recover it again. maybe slightly, but it's really more of you peel it off and that thing becomes activated.
Yeah, once you have that chemical reaction started with the oxygen hitting the zinc compound, it's going to start to deteriorate, and it will have a charge in it, but a lot of people say, well, can't I just take a sticker off the back of the battery and set it on the counter and then come back and use it whenever I want to. No, that battery will eventually die just sitting on your countertop.
Right. Very different than your standard, AA, AAA that you can just keep in the cabinet, and then once you start using it, it starts discharging. But this is different. It's activated by that sticker removal. Now, these batteries also come in several different power options, and we've got a great graphic for this as well. We start out with basically a size 10 battery, and that is the smallest size over there on the far right hand side. And all of these batteries come with a color counterpart to them, and you'll see if you are purchasing them in stores and things like that, they've all got these color coded stickers essentially. So we start with that size 10 over on the right hand side, and what would you say is the average battery life for one of those?
3 to 5 days typically.
3 to 5 days. Okay.
Yeah, and that always depends obviously on the type of hearing aid that you're using, if there's any kind of wireless capability of that particular device. Usually with the size 10 battery, those hearing aids don't have a whole lot of wireless capability, but also the severity of your hearing loss and the amount of digital features that you're using with it as well. But you have a typical milliamp drainage of around 1.2 with that, with most of those types of hearing aids. And so when you think about the milliamp hours that are inside of these sizes of batteries, you're limited by the space that you have, and so you'll typically get around a 3 to 5 day battery life.
Yeah, with that smaller size. Now there's other sizes, as we saw with that graphic as well. Moving forward from the size 10, we move up to a size 312 battery. I would argue that that's probably the most common battery size on the market here today.
You don't have to argue.
Yeah, okay. It is the most popular. And moving up from there, there's a size 13 battery and then even a size 675 battery. Now, those ones aren't as common. Those are more for superpower or ultra power hearing aids, as well as cochlear implant processors are powered by those as well.
Yeah, and when you start looking at the battery life going through those different sizes, so a 312 battery, I typically tell people 5 to 7 days on those. Most individuals who are using the size 13 battery are getting, up to 10 days to 2 weeks out of those hearing aid batteries. And then you start looking at the 675s. And even though those are powering like super power or ultra power hearing aids in a lot of cases, some people will get 2 to 3 weeks out of a 675 battery. And again, this all has to do with how much power you're using with your devices. If you are streaming a lot of audio, almost everybody does some kind of Bluetooth streaming and things like that with their hearing aids. And that has actually evolved the hearing aid technology or the battery technology inside of hearing aids as well. A lot of companies were realizing that the way that the batteries were discharging energy was really bad for a high energy use device when you're doing Bluetooth streaming and things like that. So they've literally started changing the chemical composition of how those batteries discharge as well.
Right. And I'm glad that they did, because now we've gotten to the point where through the use of a size 10, a size 312, a size 13, or even a size 675 battery, these disposable batteries are actually able to power nearly any make, model, or style of hearing aid on the market. And so we're going to start jumping into the benefits of disposable battery technology, because there's a lot of them. And the first one is that they are available for all style options. So we've got a graphic here as well that shows various style options of different hearing aids. You can see over on the left-hand side, that hearing aid definitely would use a size 10 battery, that teeny tiny one. And as you move through the lineup over to the right-hand side, you start using some 312 batteries, and at that far right-hand side, I believe that device actually uses a size 13, but if it were to be an even higher powered device, potentially a 675 from there. But really, there's no device that's off limits there from a style standpoint that can use a disposable battery.
Yeah, you can pretty much have your pick of whatever style that you want to, and most hearing aid manufacturers will have a disposable battery option. So if you determine that a lot of these benefits that we're going to be rattling off here seem to fit your lifestyle and what you find to be important, chances are you'll be able to find a hearing aid that can match that from a disposable battery technology standpoint. Now, probably the biggest thing about this is convenience. Now, to be fair, there are conveniences of disposable battery technology as well as rechargeable battery technology. But when you look at the convenience of a disposable battery, you can change that battery at any time. So if you are out and about and you hear that low battery warning, I think if you're a hearing aid user, you might have noticed a low battery warning, or you tell inside of your smartphone app that your battery is getting low, you can change that battery. You can either change it, when you're out eating dinner, you can go to the restroom, change that battery. Typically, you'll want to carry those batteries on you, either in your wallet, your pocket, your purse, your vehicle, as long as it's not 115 degrees in Phoenix or, below 50 degrees in Alaska. I don't know. But you can pretty much have those batteries anywhere, and you stash them in different places, and you can literally change them whenever you want to.
Yeah, definitely a convenience factor there. You never have to worry about running out of power so long as you have scattered battery packs just about anywhere that you frequent often. What's nice too is that, let's say you run out of those batteries. Well, they're also widely available for purchase as well. So drugstores, places like Target, CVS, Walgreens, electronic stores, Best Buy, places like that. They're always going to have this supply of hearing aid batteries. So even if you run out, even if you forget them, even if you travel to a different state or perhaps even another country and you need access to that power, you're able to purchase them.
Yeah, and as far as I know, other countries are also color-coded. So if you ever get confused about, what size battery you use, because it's been a while since you last saw your hearing care professional, you're just looking for the same color of pack that you always would get. And so that whatever that sticker is that you remove off, you probably have some of those stickers stuck on your shoes or in your hair, or
I find them everywhere. I find them everywhere. Even if I haven't touched a disposable battery in a long time, I will find them on the bottom of my shoe. And it's
so if
fun.
you get confused, just look on your shoes. You'll probably have one of those stickers stuck on there, and go purchase one of those. But literally anywhere, you can purchase those batteries. The other thing here is this idea of reliability. So disposable battery hearing aid technology has been around for a long time. And anytime that something's been around for quite some time, typically reliability with that gets better. And so when you look at how long all disposable battery hearing aids have been on the market, these hearing aid manufacturers have done a really good job of making these devices work consistently. Every once in a while you'll run into issues just like you would with any hearing aid, but by and large, when you're inside of my clinic, I'm typically advising people that if they're looking for the most reliability, they want to go with a disposable battery hearing aid, especially if you have limited access to getting back to see your hearing care professional regularly.
Right. Now, also, if you're an individual that maybe doesn't have consistent access to power, like we said, we can change these out at any time, really. But this is really important for people who live certain lifestyles, especially if you are traveling a lot, right? So if you're going from country to country, you may need to make sure that you're having those converters and adapters and things so that you're getting if you have rechargeable hearing aids, that you're getting the appropriate amount of charge to them. But with disposable batteries, let's say if you're an outdoorsman and you love bird watching and you're out and you go do a 3-day trip with no access to power there, right? You are still able to put those batteries into your hearing aids and still have a great trip. Hiking, traveling, I mean, there's so many reasons. A lot of individuals live in areas that may not have consistent access to power from a plug-in standpoint to a wall, and so these disposable batteries are really helpful for
that. Or they use
too.
all their power to use with their smart devices and laptops to watch our show here, and so they want to preserve those outlets and all of that for those items, right?
Right.
And the other benefit here is that disposable battery hearing aids typically are not as expensive as rechargeable hearing aids. Now, there is a little bit of a trade-off there because you are having to purchase disposable battery hearing aids, but typically disposable battery hearing aids are not that expensive. I mean, over the course of a typical month for most users, because most users use a size 312 battery, is you're using one battery per week per hearing aid, which means that one pack of batteries that might cost you $5-6 is lasting you the entire month.
Yeah.
And so from a cost perspective, you could potentially be saving money by going with the disposable battery hearing aid because the initial expense of that disposable battery hearing aid is not as high.
Right. Lots of benefits to disposable battery hearing aids.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I love them. I mean, people always ask me, well, which one would you go with? And I'm like, well, I'm not you, but knowing my personal lifestyle, I tend to lean more towards going with disposable battery. But there are some other benefits that come along with rechargeable. So again, it's totally to each to their own. Now, next week, we're going to be talking about rechargeable battery benefits and negatives potentially. So make sure that you tune in next week if you want to hear kind of the counter argument against going with disposable battery hearing aids. But before we get to our Hearing Up Provider Spotlight, I do want to talk about our next sponsor here. So this last weekend, I went up to CES, which was in Las Vegas, Nevada. And you know what people do up in Las Vegas, Nevada?
What do they do?
Well, they gamble. And you know how they gamble?
They roll the
They
dice.
roll the dice. That's right. So now, if you have hearing aids and you've used your loss and damage coverage for those hearing aids and you have not renewed your loss and damage, then you're rolling the dice. But here's the problem. You can only use your loss and damage claim one time per hearing aid. So if you lost your hearing aids in Las Vegas and you want to get a new set of devices and you don't have loss and damage coverage, you have to buy a whole entire new set of hearing aids really before you're ready, because those hearing aids could only be a year old at that point. And so that's why I recommend that you consider getting extended loss and damage coverage through a company called ESCO. Now, ESCO specializes in providing loss and damage and repair insurance coverage for your hearing aids, so you do not have to pay for expensive repairs or buy new hearing aids before you are ready. They have a variety of different coverage plans, and you can get a quote for your exact hearing aids on their website and even purchase your plan through their website. If you go to esco.com/Dr. Cliff, Dr. Cliff Show viewers get a $10 Visa gift card just for registering your hearing aids. You don't have to do anything other than just register them. But it's a very good idea if you happen to be the type of person who likes to lose your hearing aids a lot or misplace them or damage them beyond the point that they can be repaired. You really need to make sure that you have extended coverage for that.
Yeah, we'll leave rolling the dice to Vegas.
Yeah. And just for the record, I don't like to roll the dice. That is not my style. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Well, now we get to move into our Hearing Up Provider Spotlight. And today we have Dr. Laura Pertesi. So, Dr. Laura Pertesi went to Auburn University for both her bachelor's and her doctorate program. She is involved in all sorts of organizations. She has got her certification from ASHA. She's also in the American Academy of Audiology. She's a board member of the Audiology Practice Standards Organization, and she's on the Florida Academy of Audiology Advocacy Task Force as well. She also does outreach and is on the publicity committee for the American Academy of Audiology, and she's in the audiology, American
Academy of Doctors of Audiology.
Thank you so much.
Go.
Okay,
Yep.
I've got so many abbreviations in front of me right now.
Either she's an overachiever or I'm an incredible underachiever.
Yeah, either way, right? So she's been practicing since 2012, and she works at Citrus Hearing Clinic in Claremont, Florida. And an interesting fact about her is that she does have progressive hearing loss, and she is a bilateral hearing aid user. So welcome, Dr. Pertesi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So just like Dr. Cook mentioned, you are a bilateral hearing aid user. And since we're talking about disposable battery hearing aid technology, the question would naturally come up is, are you using disposable battery hearing aids or rechargeable battery hearing aids, and why?
I currently have disposable battery hearing aids, but I have worn just about every type of hearing aid that's out on the market, different styles, and I have worn both rechargeable and disposable.
And so what brought you back into disposable at this time frame? Was there a certain type of technology that you were looking for that only came with disposable?
Well, I currently wear Widex Evoke hearing aids. I was a theater and opera major before I switched to audiology, and Widex has really great sound quality when it comes to listening to music. And I also wanted telecoil, and they didn't have telecoil technology in their rechargeable. But when I tried rechargeable from some of the other manufacturers like Unitron and Phonak, I was just finding that it was hard to keep a charge throughout the whole day. I'm a mom. I've got a 7-year-old boy and a 7-month-old baby girl. And, sometimes these things are in my ears for 20 hours. And it was oftentimes towards the end of the day that I was finding that it just wasn't holding a charge. And then I was having to put my hearing aids away, and I still needed to hear and do things. And so I kind of went back to the batteries, because I felt like changing batteries once a week was a lot simpler than remembering to charge my hearing aids every night.
Right.
Totally
And this
agree.
is why it's such an individual decision for this. I think you bring up a great point, right? A lot of people think, oh, rechargeable, convenience, I'll just charge them each night. If you're like me, I forget to recharge everything I have that's rechargeable. And then I'm going, I wish I could just fill this up with 100% battery right now. That'd be so much better. So, how do you make that determination with your patients in the office? How do you determine who would do better with a disposable battery device versus a rechargeable device?
Yeah, well, we do a communications needs assessment at my clinic with our patients when we're going through kind of the hearing aid evaluation and selection process. And so we really look at their lifestyle and their listening needs and those sorts of things. My own grandmother, for example, I ended up switching her from disposable to rechargeable because she had macular degeneration. She had, arthritis, and it was just really difficult for her to change those batteries on her own. And so the rechargeability let her keep her independence, and that she didn't have to have my mom help her then with changing her batteries. And plus, she was worried about dropping them. And because I have little kids, my sister has little kids, she was worried about the children finding those batteries. And it can be dangerous if you ingest those button batteries. That's a real hazard for kids. And so for her, it was the right decision to move her into rechargeable. And she also, grew up during the Depression and would just wait until the last little bit of juice was sucked out of that disposable battery before she would change it. And, if one hearing aid would beep before the other, she would only change one at a time. And I was like, it's so cheap. Just go ahead and change both so that they're closer together. So I think at one point they were like 3 days off or apart from die. So for her, it was right to transition her to that. But for me and for my lifestyle and how much streaming I do and how much I'm wearing my aids, my clinic's about 30 minutes from Disney World. So yeah, being able to change my battery everywhere. I think I was on It's a Small World one time and it started beeping at me and I was like, hold on, I gotta change this right now. So I like that freedom and that ability to change it when I need to. And then plus, I think that, rechargeable batteries only recharge a finite number of times, right? So once it's hit a certain number of charges, that rechargeable battery is going to die. I know my iPhone stops charging really well after a couple of years. And I really kind of stretch my hearing aids sometimes, and although the average life expectancy of aids is like 5 to 7 years, I just feel like I'll get more years of life out of my devices if I'm not having to worry about the rechargeable battery going bad or the charger stopping working or something like that.
I think that this is an important discussion because we talk a lot about best practices on our show. In fact, that's why we're here. This is the Hearing Up Provider Spotlight. All Hearing Up providers are committed to following best practices, and part of that is having these discussions about what someone is specifically looking for inside of their lifestyle. Discussing the aspect of disposable battery versus rechargeable is a really big, important part of that as well when you're doing the technology selection. So being that we're talking about best practices at this point, you decided to join the Hearing Up Network for a particular reason. Why was that?
I am very passionate about best practices. As a hearing aid user myself, I have seen the difference that real ear measurement makes in how well I am able to hear with my own personal devices. And, I just really believed in what the Hearing Up provider group was doing. I think that our number one job as audiologists is to educate our patients and to help them make sure they're making the best, most well-informed decisions about their hearing and balance healthcare possible. And I wanted to be a part of a collective of other providers that believed in it as much as I did. And I love that because I am in Florida, it's a very transient state, right? We get snowbirds, we get tourists, and I know that if I see someone here and then I have to send them back home to New York or Maine or Canada, that I can refer them to someone else within the network that is going to treat them the way that I would treat them, is going to follow the same steps and procedures and protocols that we essentially have at my clinic. And that was just really nice for me. I love that confidence of being able to say, I might not know this person personally, but I know the kind of practitioner that they have to be a part of this network. And so I can refer you to them with confidence to help you when you are so far away from where I'm located.
Well, that's awesome. So to finish off here, tell us a little bit about your clinic. So you're there kind of more in the Central Florida. You said the Orlando area, right?
Yeah, we're just a little west of Orlando in Claremont, Florida. It's in Lake County. Mm-hmm.
Very good, very good. So thank you so much for taking time to join us today and talk to us about your personal experience, actually, with disposable and rechargeable technology. It was very fitting for today's episode.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Cliff.
Awesome. All right, take care, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I love what she said there about confidence in transferring to other providers, because it's so true. Anytime, I mean, we have a lot of snowbirds here as well, a lot of those transient patients that spend half the year somewhere and half the year somewhere else, and it's so true, the confidence in knowing, okay, if 6 months out of the year you're seeing this provider, I know that all of the same protocols that we use in our practice are going to be used in their practice over there. It's just this breath of relief, like,
for sure,
they're going to be taken care of.
Yeah, you're definitely right. In fact, we have patients who will move to different states, like move, not just snowbird, but they'll move and they'll say, I want to go to a place that does things the way that you guys do them. And it's like, well, that's good news, because I have a network of providers across the country. Hopefully you're within a couple hours drive of them, and most of them are saying, well, it's totally worth it to get this high level of care. I'll drive 2 to 3 hours if I need to get to the closest hearing up provider.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, with that, we're going to move into our next sponsor segment here. So our next sponsor is Eosera. We've talked about Eosera here on the show for quite a while, and there is a reason why for sure. Eosera has products for ear wax, ear itch, and ear pain. We use the Earwax MD in clinic, and didn't you just have a video come out about this?
Just posted a video this last week on Earwax MD.
Okay, so definitely check that one out. We use it nearly exclusively in clinic because it just works. It just does what we need it to do. And if you are someone that has that type of wax that does build up very, very quickly, perhaps becomes impacted and is potentially even painful to get removed in clinic, it is a great way to kind of loosen that up and dislodge it and allow your provider to then remove it fully from there. Not only the lineup of products that they have, but they also have their EarView MD camera. And so if you are someone that builds up wax a lot and you just can't really tell, am I starting to get my ears full of wax or not, you can use their EarView MD camera, take a look in your own ears and see if, yep, it's time for me to go back in and get my ears cleaned out again. So if you have not checked out any of their products yet, make sure you visit eosera.com, and if you purchase any of the products on there, make sure that you use the promo code CLIFF20. That'll get you 20% off your entire purchase. Otherwise, their products are available at CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and other large national retailers. So thank you to Eosera.
All right, so we talked a lot about the pros of disposable battery hearing aids, and Dr. Laura Protesi was also talking about some of the advantages that those batteries had with her and her particular lifestyle. Right. But we need to get into some of the disadvantages, because there clearly are disadvantages. There's a reason why rechargeable battery hearing aids started being created. Sure. And so the first one here is, and actually something that she mentioned, which is these hearing aid batteries are very small. Now, depending on the size of the device that we've been watching this show on, those batteries might have looked big on the screen, or they might have looked really small on the screen. But in real life, those batteries are really small. And it's because you put them into really small hearing aids typically. But if you have finger dexterity issues where you can't manipulate either the battery doors or the small batteries, or peeling the sticker off of the back of the battery, that can be a huge problem and a deterrent to someone actually using that particular type of hearing aid.
Definitely. definitely. And as she alluded to as well, macular degeneration, even just seeing those batteries or seeing the sticker to remove it. So not only from a dexterity standpoint, arthritis and things like that, a lot of our patients do deal with that, but seeing them as well. Another disadvantage of these disposable battery hearing aids is that they can really just die at any time. And that is kind of just the nature of the beast with a disposable battery hearing aid. I often tell patients in clinic the way that they work is that they're at 100% charge and they're at 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 0. I mean, they go from 100 to 0 that quickly. And I also joke that they oftentimes die at the worst possible moments. So you've got to definitely be ready, like you said earlier, putting packs of them in your car, in your bag. Make sure your spouse has them on them as well, at home, a couple of different places, just so that you're really ready, because they can and will die at any time.
Absolutely. And you actually heard Dr. Protesi say that she was in Orlando, Florida, at Disney World there, and was going through the It's a Small World show. And if you guys haven't been on that ride, it's like you're on this boat, like you can't go anywhere. You're surrounded by water. And if you did not have a stash of disposable batteries on you at that point, or if she did not have them on her at that point, she would have not been able to hear the rest of that ride.
Which is full of singing, chanting songs, sweet little gentle songs. You got to be able to hear those to really get the full It's a Small World experience.
Yeah, so I mean, you really do have to manage the supply of your batteries, have them stashed literally everywhere. You're going to turn into kind of like a chipmunk where you forget where half of those batteries are at, and then all of a sudden you'll go find them, but you find out that they've been expired for 6 years by the time you found them, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have this idea of you have an ongoing repeated purchase here. Mm-hmm. This is something that you would not necessarily have with a rechargeable battery hearing aid, because you're just popping it back into your charger. Now, that's going to cost you some electricity costs, but in general, once you purchase your rechargeable hearing aids, you're not having to purchase ongoing battery supplies. But with this, you definitely do.
You definitely are. You're purchasing them, like you said earlier, about if you have a 312 battery, you can probably anticipate that in a pack that comes with 8 in it is going to get you through a month. And if you're buying it month by month, then that's something that you've got to just keep track of. I definitely recommend purchasing more than that so that you can stash them around in different places, but just something to be aware of that you got to keep an eye on that.
And you might be a high energy user as well. So if you're someone who likes to stream all the time, all of a sudden this recommendation of you getting an estimated 7 days worth of battery life might get cut down to 3, which we've seen before in these devices. So there's a chance that you might be actually having to purchase significantly more batteries than what you thought you would when you first got into it.
Definitely. Now, a big thing that she also spoke about is that she's got small children, and straight up, batteries are toxic if ingested by both pets and by children as well. There's actually around 3,500 incidences of battery ingestion, these small pill batteries per year, and that requires immediate medical attention. I do know an individual who her dog had chewed up both of her hearing aids, had ingested both of the batteries, and had to have those removed at the vet surgically, and that cost about $4,700. So this is something that you really have to be aware about. You got to know where your batteries are, and when you remove them, if you drop one on the ground and you have kids or pets around, you're not doing anything else that day until you find that battery.
For sure.
At all.
We don't treat pediatrics, children inside of our clinic, but a lot of disposable battery pediatric hearing aids will have a locking mechanism to where you can't get those doors open, because that would be horrible with kids opening up and seeing these little, they look like these little pills or a piece of candy or something like that, and they just pop them in their mouth.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they have a medical emergency on their hands.
This is another reason why OTC hearing aids are not approved for use under the age of 18. Another thing to think about, right? That these OTC hearing aids are not going to have battery door locks on them, and for that reason, they are not to be used with children.
Absolutely. And so when you also look at, you have to put the battery inside of the hearing aid, and you have to open and close the battery compartment each time that you do this. And so debris and moisture and all of that can leach into the hearing aid and actually cause problems, because if you can't maintain a solid contact of the battery contacts inside the hearing aid with the battery itself, all of a sudden you're going to start running into intermittency issues, reliability issues, and then that hearing aid is going to have to go off for repair more frequently.
Right. It kind of just creates another entryway into the hearing aid, right? So you got to be careful with that for sure, especially if you are someone that has significant moisture issues there too, a sweat, or where you live, perhaps in, nice rainy Florida every once in a while. So, now, from a waste perspective, over the course of an average lifespan of hearing aids, you're probably going to be using about 800 disposable batteries over that course. And just from an environmental standpoint, we talked about the change from mercury batteries over to these zinc air cell batteries, but those still need to be disposed of as well. And you really should not be throwing these in the trash at all. In fact, it's actually not allowed. These should be recycled and recycled appropriately. And most cities have facilities where you can actually go and take your bag of used disposable batteries, and they will dispose of them appropriately for you.
At the risk of having a lot of hearing care professionals hate us for saying this, but if you take them back to your hearing care professional's office, they may even have a way to get those recycled for you, so you're not having to make an extra trip elsewhere to get those button cell batteries recycled. There's also something interesting. We actually had an employee in the past who, her daughter liked to use the used button cell batteries to create pieces of art, which is really cool. So you don't have to necessarily recycle them. They might be able to be repurposed into other things as well.
Yeah, the stickers on them as well could be used to create some cool art too. So I'm sure that there are individuals out there that are creative enough to really start making some disposable battery art out of there.
Now let's not turn this into too much of a positive here.
That's
We're talking
true,
about
true.
the negatives.
All right.
No.
We're back to it. Okay, and next, something that actually we really have to talk about here is that some newer technology is actually coming out and it's not yet available in a disposable battery format. And I'll just give an example here, but the Phonak Audio Lumity devices, they came out a few months ago. At the moment, they are only available in a rechargeable format. They are not available in a battery-powered format. And on top of that, there are certain features within the devices that are also only available with rechargeable hearing aids.
Yeah, one of those features is my mother's favorite feature, which is this tap control feature. So when she double taps on her hearing aid, she can answer her phone calls, she can end her phone calls, she can pause streaming that she's doing both from the TV or her phone and resume the streaming from those devices as well. And you do not get that capability if you do not have a rechargeable battery hearing aid. So if you decide that the benefits of having disposable outweigh the cons, like you're going to be losing some other things potentially. Also, if you want, like you mentioned with the Lumity devices, is that you cannot go and get a disposable battery version of that fantastic hearing aid. So you have to go back a generation. If you want to stay with the Phonak technology, you're gonna have to go back a generation and get a Paradise hearing aid that uses a disposable battery. Now, this isn't the worst thing in the world, because the Paradise hearing aids are really good hearing aids in and of themselves as well, but you can't have the latest and greatest, at least as of this point.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see this trend as popularity of rechargeable hearing aids kind of outperforms the disposable battery hearing aids, where the manufacturers are putting out the rechargeable format first, and then a few months down the line, they will then put out their disposable battery format there.
Well, when you start looking at the sales from a lot of these hearing aid manufacturers, it's starting to switch from heavy disposable battery hearing aids to very heavy rechargeable, because people have in their minds that, oh, rechargeable's newer, it must be better. Like we're talking about here, it isn't always better to go with a rechargeable battery hearing aid. Depending on your lifestyle, it might make significantly more sense for you to go with a disposable battery hearing aid. But these manufacturers are starting to notice these trends of where people are going with their purchasing decisions. And since a lot more people are purchasing rechargeable, they're starting to focus more of their attention on this rechargeable technology, which is making it better, but it's also limiting your options.
Right, definitely. Now, there's another important piece to this, which is you cannot be storing batteries in extreme temperatures. So definitely do not put them in the freezer. I know a lot of people have this preconceived notion that if you put them into the fridge or the freezer, it slows them down. And that might work for other types of batteries. But for these, no, that's not good. That's not going to be helpful for them. And in addition to that, what I run into most often in clinic is that these batteries do, in fact, have an expiration date to them. And a lot of people who buy in bulk may have this, pack of 1,000 batteries from Costco that they've been working through over the years. But on the back of that packaging, there is, in fact, an expiration date there. And we have got this video to prove it. So in this video, actually, Kelsey Beck, our extern, is going into Target. It's one of our favorite activities here, and going to the disposable battery section. And she was finding just how many packages of batteries on the shelf to be sold were actually expired there. And all in all, at the end of this video, first of all, the oldest one she found, look at that, 2014.
That's ridiculous.
She just went there. This was like 6 months ago. So in 2022, they were selling hearing aid batteries that had expired 8 years prior. And all in all, in that basket on the floor, she found 28 packs of batteries that were on the shelf that were being sold that had expired well before then.
There's your public service announcement for the day. Don't trust batteries anywhere. And it has a lot to do with how quickly they rotate through batteries as well. In our clinic, we rotate through them like crazy, so it's always fresh batteries. But who knows how long those have been sitting in a warehouse. Also, when you buy on Amazon, there's no way for you to check if you buy your batteries from Amazon.
Not until you get them. So Make sure you do.
Yep. But hey, you know what? It's time for Q&A, and maybe you guys might have some questions for Kelsey about that trip that she had to Target, because she's here to ask us some questions from you guys.
Yes, we've actually had so much engagement that I have been struggling to keep up with everybody online. So if I didn't get to everybody's comments, I am so very sorry. This has been just an incredible episode, so thank you everybody for all of this engagement. The first comment that I actually have is from your mom.
Oh, great.
And it's not necessarily a question, but apparently your dad grumbles every single time you mention her and her Phonak Paradise Audio 90R with double tap. So you're making your parents grumble from afar.
Well, my mother loves it. My dad, he's like, when are you going to talk about me? And I'm like, Dad, that if you start getting earwax in your ear canals again, I can start having you on the show more.
Yeah, see? He just needs to
his
build
ears
more
to fill up.
earwax.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so like I said, we have a lot to get through, so we're just going to plow through and get as many answered as we can.
Okay.
Is it unusual for rechargeable batteries to last only 3 months, given about 15 hours of use per day? Mine died and had to be replaced by the manufacturer, again, after only 3 months.
Sounds like it might have been one of those Costco Kirkland signature hearing aids.
May have just been faulty initially.
Yeah.
That is non-traditional. Using them 15 hours a day should be more than fine. In fact, that would actually be using the full capacity of the rechargeable hearing aid. And some will say that for lithium-ion batteries, that's a good thing, and you should do that. So, no, that makes me think that it is faulty.
Definitely faulty.
And could have fallen into that power reliability issue with the rechargeable Costco aids.
For sure. And that's why those hearing aids largely were discontinued, because of massive reliability issues. So I think that probably, if I had to guess, is one of those devices. And you know what, leave a follow-up comment, whoever asked that question. I would be interested to know if that was in fact one of those Costco devices.
Me too.
Yeah, because again, not common at all.
No.
We actually just talked about this next question, so I'm going to skip it. It had to do with where should you store batteries, no extreme temperatures, things of that nature. Can you get spare rechargeable batteries? And if so, how long do they last if they idle?
Repeat that question again.
As you have rechargeable hearing aids, can you get spare batteries to replace them if and when they do eventually die?
Yes, I see where the question is. So, there are certain manufacturers of rechargeable hearing aids that have an in-office replaceable lithium battery. So Oticon is one of those manufacturers. Almost everybody else seals their rechargeable batteries inside of the units. And so this is part of the problem. So if you run into a battery issue with a disposable battery hearing aid, you just change the battery.
Yeah.
Like, usually it's just a quick fix, you're done. If you have a battery issue with a lithium battery hearing aid, oftentimes that hearing aid has to go back into the hearing aid manufacturer. You're without it for a week or two. If your hearing care professional doesn't have a loaner device for you to use in the interim, you're basically without your hearing aid for however long that takes. And hopefully, if it's one of the Oticon ones, your hearing care professional has one of the lithium batteries in their office available for you to use, but that will not be fully charged when they replace it, so you might have to go for a couple hours without, assuming they have one in stock.
Right. What I will say as well is that we're kind of jumping the gun here because next week is Rechargeable.
True.
So all of these questions so far, they're in the lineup for next week.
Yeah.
But they do intertwine with one another.
They do.
Because you're weighing your options, right? So even though we're talking about disposable this week, Rechargeable questions are going to be coming up because we're kind of playing the comparison game a little bit.
That's right.
Absolutely. This is an excellent question. If either of you were to get hearing aids, would you go battery or rechargeable?
Man.
Which is such a loaded question. I feel like. Anyway.
I'm telling you right now, I would have to go disposable battery because simply because of the fact that I am just terrible at recharging things that require recharging until they're at their very last leg and I need them desperately and then I'm plugged in. So if I could just swap out my phone battery when it got low, oh my gosh, that'd be so nice. I'm always running on low. So for me personally, I would actually be a disposable battery gal myself.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I tell patients all the time that finding the right hearing aid and the right treatment is a game of trade-offs. And
For sure.
so what's the most important thing to me? And I would have to say the most important thing to me is reliability, which would lead me to a disposable battery hearing aid. As much as I would hate to lose the tap controls and the newest, latest, and greatest technology, if the hearing aid doesn't work, none of that stuff matters anyway.
Right.
That is very true.
But super personal again. Dexterity, vision, lifestyle, everything. It doesn't mean that a rechargeable battery is not going to work for you. Again, we're just saying personally, this is what we would do.
I personally am so torn between the two that I think it would genuinely depend on what technology was available when I was selecting devices. Because again, the most important thing is that it's matching what I need for my hearing. And if, for example, like Phonak you were talking earlier, only has their newest line in the rechargeable, and if that was my option and that was a feature that I needed, then that's where I would go.
Right.
But you know, the convenience of rechargeable versus the hassle of the batteries, but I could talk myself in circles about this.
Oh, yeah. I would have a very hard time picking, actually, but I would just...
3 hours later.
Seriously, that's probably how long it would take for me to weigh it out, for sure. That's perfect.
Are we expected to see any improvements in zinc air batteries? It seems like the tech has plateaued, and we've not seen things like more battery life and smaller options, things like that.
Yes, battery technology is continuing to improve. So a couple years ago, I feel like patients were asking that question, and then all of a sudden Rayovac came out with their ProLine Advanced hearing aid technology that was better for high drain devices, so for using Bluetooth streaming and all of that. And their data showed that people were getting an extra day or two of battery life with those disposable batteries. And if you ask people who so we dispense a lot of Rayovac ProLine Advanced inside the clinic just because we typically try to dispense whatever the best is of everything. That's what we try to dispense. And so when people go and they buy these, non-name brand or off the shelf at the grocery store or a big box store, and they're like, hey, I bought these batteries and they were a really good price, but I get like 3 days less battery life compared to the ones that you guys give me. That's because of the battery technology.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, actually, that brings up a great point that we didn't touch on, is that results will vary based off of what brand that you're buying. And there are a lot of brands out there of these disposable batteries. And yeah, they are not all built the same because we do see such a improved or longer life out of that device there.
I had the benefit of spending an hour talking to engineers who worked for Rayovac when I was at a AAA conference, and you would feel dumb talking to them with how much they know about batteries. It is unbelievable.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that there is that much to know about batteries, but I totally believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You know, you think about it. So you have, these are chemicals and electricity.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's not like you're talking to an electrical engineer for this or a chemical engineer. It's like you need to know all of this stuff and how it all works together, because it's a chemical reaction that's actually causing this with that battery. And they're always improving the chemical composition of the compounds inside of the battery to try to get more battery life with less material, basically.
I will say, though, if they made them any smaller than a size 10, you'd have a hard time holding them.
You need
I
tweezers.
mean, it literally wouldn't work. So a longer capacity on them, that's definitely something that we can look forward to in the future. But any smaller size on a lot of those models, and then you're getting to the point where they're teeny tiny to where you can't even hold them.
Oh, yeah. I struggle with the size 10 batteries, the itty bitty ones.
Yeah, they're really small.
And if you drop them, you're never going to find them. And like you were talking about with your pets too, small children, that is a risky one, I would
be
say.
aware of for sure.
I also can't see anything, so
No, that doesn't help.
it doesn't help at all.
I think we got time for one more question if we got one.
Oh my goodness, do we have so many?
Well, we do plan on doing a couple of episodes here, probably around once a month or so, where we just do rapid fire questions for the whole episode, because there's always so many great questions that we can't get to. So if your question is not answered today, keep asking them, because we are banking them.
Oh, yeah. This next question is about, again, sizes of batteries. If you do a lot of streaming, but you don't necessarily need all of the features in like a size 13T, so something with a telecoil, for example, would you still recommend going a larger battery size if you know ahead of time that you're doing the streaming?
Me personally, absolutely. I tell my patients, if you are going to be a big streamer, and if that's something that's really important to you, not only should you be using a disposable battery device, but just move up a size. The hearing aid itself doesn't get that much bigger, but the battery life that you get out of it is that much longer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation. I literally had this conversation with a patient who's been my patient for years up to this point. He'd probably love if I mentioned him on the channel, but he didn't give me express permission, so I'm not going to mention his name, but you know who you are. We were talking about cross technology. So cross devices from a couple years ago using disposable battery technology. Now cross devices have the ability to use rechargeable battery technology. The problem is that the battery life is limited because you're constantly streaming from one ear to the other all the time. So that is a wireless form of communication. And so there are some rechargeable battery hearing aids that only give you 11 to 12 hours of battery life per day. And then if you're doing this with a size 312 disposable battery hearing aid, now you're starting to look at maybe getting 3 to 4 days out of that battery life rather than going with a hearing aid that has a size 13 battery that's going to give you a full week at least at that point. Right. And then that's not even including all the other streaming that you would do from your TV or from your smart device. And so it really just depends. Again, if you're going with best practices and person-centered care, you're having these conversations, and it might make sense for someone who is not a heavy wearer. Let's say that they wear their hearing aids 10 hours a day, and they're like, Cliff, I wear it 10 hours a day. That's just how long I wear it. Can a rechargeable battery get me that full length? Yes, it can. So then we can go with rechargeable. But if you're like, hey, I want to wear these suckers 18 hours a day, you might want to consider a disposable battery, and then on top of that, a larger size disposable battery hearing aid.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the comments section really was landing, was everybody wanted a bottom line of which is better, and
there's no bottom line.
There is no bottom line. It is so heavily dependent on what you're doing, how you're using your hearing aids, what exactly you're looking for, and again, these conversations will be had with you with your hearing care provider, or they should be. Anyway.
They should be.
For sure. It should be a conversation. Remember that the next time you see your hearing care professional. If you're going to a hearing up provider, they're going to have that conversation with you of which one is better. But that is all the time that we have for this week, guys. We really appreciate you joining us, coming back off of the long vacation holiday time that we were away. Make sure that you see episode 2 of this 2-part series with this battle between disposable battery hearing aids and rechargeable hearing aids. And as always, we'll see you next week.